So myself and Nakai are underneath it, and I'll never forget like the heat. It's me and Nakai under the car, and like literally the car is like this far away from our bodies.
I finally got you. I've got to just be grateful for whatever I get, right?
Yeah, sorry, man.
The most famous of them all.
I'm definitely not that.
The most elusive.
Elusive, probably, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's just schedule and stuff. It's tough with kids and work and time. The time difference is tough as well. So
yeah, Churn did his interview at like 4 a.m.
for him,
Yeah.
it
was his option too. I told him I'd work with him on it, but that's what he wanted to do. So
yeah, Turn's a good guy.
Yeah, see, and we'll get into it, but I mean that's like your era, right? Like when Churn was getting into it was when you and Aaron were probably around the shop.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't remember when I first came in contact with Churn. It was online, obviously, first. I only met him actually in Japan, or not in Japan, in Sydney.
In Sydney.
When I was living there. And we took a trip to, my wife and I took a trip to Melbourne, and we met Sharon just for coffee and stuff. We hung out for a little while.
Wow.
But he's a good dude.
So I'm trying to think of how I even ever met you. How do we ever even like come in contact? Was it through, it was Instagram for sure.
It was Instagram, yeah.
But why would we have started talking?
You had that green M3 at the time, the E92.
Yeah.
And I think I stumbled across a picture, and then I think I followed you and you followed me back, and then we just got chatting, I think.
So I wonder if it's your fault I have one of these.
I'll take the blame for that.
Maybe. I mean, I had seen I've always kind of wanted one.
Since when though? What was the first one you've?
So to give you an idea, in 2010, maybe 2011, I had seen them by then because we were making fake idlers sprays for our cars. Like our race cars, we did fake idlers paint on our tires and stuff.
Right.
For our race cars at the time. So that was like 2010 or 11 maybe.
Right.
So and that's probably, it's probably right around when Mark brought his over or when Mark built his, right? So I think that we had seen those first ones. I can't claim to be a purist to have seen like that original magazine article that Brian Scotto did. I don't think I had ever seen that. My light's already out. Okay. So you were saying that you were starting to look at Porsches. You'd never had them before. What year was it?
I'm just saying like late 2000s, probably 2009, 10. We used to like hang out at my friend's house before we'd go out drinking or go to clubs or bars or whatever. And we'd have a few drinks and listen to music, and we just scrolling, just looking at car stuff. There's a lot of blogs back then. Like, it's not like Instagram wasn't even out back then, but so there's just a lot of blogs and stuff online. And then you'd see the odd picture of these like crazy Porsches in Japan, like like Stella Artois and a few of the really early ones, like, and some of them are green and orange, and it was nothing I'd ever really seen before. And that's kind of when which is when I heard of RWB the first time, for sure.
Yeah, because all of a sudden you're seeing cars that, it's not like the classic purist Porsche. You're starting to see built Porsches that are more your style, something that you're into, like a car that you would build.
I think even at that time, I wasn't even into that kind of, like, we were all driving Hondas, like most of our friends. Just Hondas everywhere, like EG6. I had an EG6, like Sully had an EG6, like the lads had like DC2s, EKs, like it was just Hondas everywhere in Ireland at that time. And there was never any like wide body stuff, or that wasn't really a thing. It was just low, super loud, no interior, like just, and we just driving around like lunatics because we're all like late teens, early 20s, around that, like kind of around the time we had the Hondas. So it wasn't even like, oh, I love, one day I'll have a Porsche, and then I saw RWB and I was like, oh, I'd love to have an RWB. But like going to car shows as a kid and a teenager in Ireland, like there was a lot of Porsches in Ireland years ago, like 930s and 964s and stuff.
Yeah.
And the all like G body stuff and the odd 356, and I knew what they were kind of. They all at that time they all kind of looked the same to me, and it was just a 911. Like I wasn't super into Porsche at that stage. But when I came to Japan then, and then I actually met Nakai, it all just kind of clicked together. It was weird.
How did that all happen?
It's kind of a long story.
We got time.
Yeah, we have.
It'll be interesting. I can edit it down if we need to, but it's probably pretty interesting because you went from like Honda Civics in Ireland, and then all of a sudden you're in Japan meeting Nakai. So something had to happen.
Yeah, so I'll start from Ireland, and then it'll just give context to how it kind of happened. So I was a BMW mechanic in Dublin, like an apprentice. So I was training to be a technician in like the biggest BMW dealership in Ireland, Frank Keen's. And it was my best friend Sully's 21st birthday was coming up, and his mother messaged me and one of my other close friends, Phil, who lives in Sydney now, and she wanted to like send him away on a holiday, like as a surprise for his 21st birthday.
Okay.
So like,
good mom.
They were having yeah. So they were having a party, and then they were going to give him like the tickets, and he was like a surprise or whatever.
Yeah.
So she asked me and Phil, and I think one of the other lads as well, and she's like, have a chat with a few of the lads and like see where you want to go, and then let me know and I'll figure it out, like the tickets and hotel and blah blah blah. So we're having a few beers and playing, I think FIFA or Gran Turismo or something in Phil's house one night, and we're just chatting about where we'd like to go. And the usual place, like back then as teenagers, like 19, 20, 21-year-olds, everyone just goes to Spain and they party for a week and get like fucked up. And
yeah.
But I was chatting with Phil and we're just like talking about cars and stuff, and I was just like, why don't we go to Japan? So everyone's like buzzing, like Japan would be amazing. Like we didn't know anything about Japan back then, except obviously the limited stuff you could see on the internet back then, like about like the car culture in Japan.
Yeah. And
we all drove Hondas, and a few of the lads had like S13s and S14s and like the odd Skyline. And so everyone was into the Japanese cars. Like, so I text his mom, and she's like, Japan? Like, who goes to Japan? So it took a little bit of like negotiating, and then she agreed to it. So we came over in, I don't even remember what year that was. It was probably, I have some notes here because my memory is the worst. I think it was probably 2009. It was like August, something like that. It was late. It was really hot, like really humid. So we came over, we didn't have a clue what we were doing. Like, didn't speak Japanese. Obviously, we're just coming here for a week. So we just walked around. We like ate a lot of crap, drinking loads, like looking for cars. The lads bought suitcases full of car parts back. And then on the flight home, everyone was just like exhausted, but like just, it's so overwhelming the first time you come here. Like the noise and how clean it is, and like the people are amazing, and like the place is just beautiful, and it's just non-stop, like 24/7. So on the flight back, I was like, I'm moving to Japan. I had about a year left on my apprenticeship in Ireland with BMW. So I came back and I looked into how I could move to Japan. So the Japanese and Irish government have like a working holiday like a 1 year visa thing where you can come over and you can work like 20 hours a week or whatever. And you can kind of just like travel the country. And it's super easy to get. So I looked into it and then I applied for that visa. And then I told my manager at BMW, I was like, when I qualify, I'm not staying on. Like I'm moving to Japan. So no one believed me. Like everyone thought I was crazy. And then because I didn't know anyone here, I had no job set up. Like I didn't have that much money. As an apprentice, I had like literally no money.
Nothing, yeah.
Like my first year as an apprentice, apprenticeships in Ireland, like it was making about $150 a week. Like,
yeah,
nothing.
I used to clean cars. I get it. I was
so
moving cars at the car dealership is what I did for my first job.
Yeah, so it's it's like it was a struggle. Obviously the last year is a bit better, but it's still not. It's not great. So I saved as much as I could, and then turns out a friend of mine, Paddy, who now lives in Canada, he went to high school with a guy in Ireland that lived in Tokyo. So he had a spare room in his apartment. So I ended up just messaging him and we chatted, and then he was like, yeah, you can stay with me until you get settled, or like as long as you want. And then whatever, I forget how much the rent was a week or whatever, every month. So I came over, had no job, didn't speak Japanese. I had a little bits, like super basic. And then, so I had no job. So I had a little bit of money. So I was just kind of like kicking around and trying to find work and trying to meet people. And there was a football game, soccer for you Americans. Manchester United, the team I support, were playing Manchester City.
Yeah, everybody in Ireland likes Manchester United.
Or Liverpool, usually.
Yeah.
One or the other. But so yeah, I just looked up online. I was sitting in because we didn't have TV at home and I couldn't really stream stuff back. I didn't know how to do it. And I just wanted to go out and kind of watch the match somewhere. So I looked up a place, found a bar in Tokyo. It's Paddy Foley's. It's not there anymore. It's an Irish bar. So I went there. I was just having some food. I was sitting at the bar on my own. I was just like watching the match, and there was two Irish lads beside me. They're friends, obviously, and they were just chatting. And then they were talking about a football game the next day, or like a sports day kind of football, and Irish football, like an Irish kind of sports day thing. So I just said to one of the lads, I was like, "Oh, what's the story?" Like I played football since I was a kid, so I was like, "Oh, like if there's a chance, like I can play." And they were like, "Come down to Yokohama tomorrow." So I was like, "I just moved here like 2 days ago. I don't know I don't know how to get there or like whatever." So one of the lads was like, "I'll meet you at this station at like 7 o'clock in the morning." So I had a chat with them for a little while, and then finished a couple of drinks, and then I went home after the game. And then the next morning I woke up and I was like, I don't know, like I don't know anybody. It was kind of a little bit nervous or like anxious, and I was like, I probably just won't go. And then I was like, I don't even have boots. I didn't bring football boots with me. So it was about an hour before I had to go, and I was like, oh fuck it, I'll just go. So I went anyway and had a great day with the lads and met loads of people. And then we were having a few beers after the games were finished, and the lads were like, just asked me like, what are you going to do in Japan, blah blah blah. So I was like, I'm just going to we're trying to get work with cars, like being I was a mechanic and blah blah blah. So but I was like, I'll just try and get a job in a bar maybe first, just like make a bit of money and try and meet people and see what happens. So one of the guys was saying there was an Irish lad working in this bar in Tokyo, so give him a shout, give him a message on Facebook, blah blah blah. So I messaged Keith, it's one of my close friends now. He moved, he was here up until a few months ago. He moved to the Netherlands. So I messaged him. It turns out he lived 5 minutes away from where I grew up in Ireland, and we never met. We had mutual friends. I mean, the first time we met was in Tokyo, like, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
But he was moving to San Francisco for a few months to play Irish football. So he basically asked the manager and gave me his job as a barman. So I got my first job within like a week or a couple of weeks. And then one of the nights, there was this Irish guy at the bar, two Irish lads at the bar, old, like 40s, 50s, drunk. They're chatting and then they were asking me, and I was like, "Oh, young Irish lad, like, what you doing here?" Blah, blah, blah. And I was like telling them about cars. So one of the guys was like, I'm buying a tuning, like car company, like tuning Lamborghinis, Ferraris, all kind of high end stuff. And he's like, maybe you could work for me. So I was like, yeah. So he gave me his business card, and then he was drunk. I thought nothing of it really. I was like, oh, it's just a bullshitter. Like everyone's when they're
nice
drunk,
at the bar,
like,
right?
And it's like, I'm buying this, blah blah blah. So about a month later, his friend was in the bar again. He was a regular, and he was like, "Oh, did you email like Finton?" I was like, "No, I never got around to." He's like, "Email him. Like he'll look after you. Like he's genuine." So I messaged him, and then he was like, "Can we have a meeting like next week?" So I met him again. He was buying a company from a guy in Australia, a tuning company. So he's like, work for me. He sent me to Australia, like Melbourne, for like 3 months to train. So I was doing like computer programming and all that kind of stuff, and working with a guy called Bill in Melbourne. So I came back to Japan then. So I quit the bar, obviously, before I went to train, and then I started working for Finton. So he knew this guy somehow online, like, and a guy called Hero from down in Kansai. It turns out it's Toshi's brother.
Hero TV.
Yeah, is that his?
Yeah, his YouTube. Yeah.
All right. I haven't spoken to him in a long time. He's a good guy, like, as well. And so he was basically the kind of middleman. Because he had a lot of connections in car companies in Japan, and obviously with Toshi racing for so long, and obviously Toshi has all the connections. So we kind of got in with them, and then they'd set up meetings, and myself and my boss would like drive around and just go to the meetings, and like we'd have they'd have conversations in Japanese about what we can provide, and then I'd tune cars a lot of times on the spot, and we do like cars for free to show them, like. But in Japan, there's not that many dynos here, so it was really tough to kind of gauge. Like in America, you like go to a dyno and you tune the car, and you like obviously can see. But Japan, with
street tuning,
the noise, the size, street tuning, like, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did this for months. Like we got a bunch of contracts and it was kind of busy, and then this was before the earthquake. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to remember months and dates.
Earthquake was what, 2011?
Yeah, March. Yeah. So a few months before that, I can't remember which month exactly, but we were out in Chiba. We had a couple of meetings and stuff, and then we were with Toshi. So it's Toshi, myself, and my boss. So we're just driving around. They're chatting in Japanese in the front, and I'm just in the back trying to pay attention or listening and trying to figure out what they were talking about. And then we pulled up outside RWB. So we had the meeting at like 3:00, whatever, or 4. It was probably later. It's Nakai's schedule. He sleeps during the day. So we got there, and I'm in the back of the car, and I'm like, I know these cars. The cars in the parked out front. So he didn't have the yard next door at that point. It was just literally, there was just 911s like rammed, squished together like out the front. So we pulled up and we went in, and the whole time in my brain, I'm like this is the stuff I used to look at on the internet like years ago. So anyway, meeting Nakai, he spoke very, very little English then. So him and Toshi obviously know each other, they work together, and then so they were chatting and my boss was talking, and then Nakai asked me could I tune his personal race car, 993. It was the Royal Montego Bay car.
Yeah.
The silver 993 that came Tuner House, which is the company I worked for, and then it's now Blue. It's just Blue, I think. I forgot what's called. Rauh Passion, is that the one?
You're going to be better with the names than I am, probably.
I'm really not.
I kind of picked a few that I follow, and I like watch what happens to them, and then the other ones, I knew that one. I remember Montego Bay, but I couldn't think it was because Churn had told me about it when we were talking. So I think I got that one maybe from him. But anyway, so you got to tune on that one originally. So it was the first one.
That was the first day I was there, and then I think that's when Aaron Maya came that day, just to take photos. And that's how we met randomly.
Yeah.
So this was 2011, maybe late 2010. Blanking on it was probably late 2010. So I was tuning Nakai's car, and then my boss came over to see what was like, how it was going. So I was chatting. So my boss at the time, he was Irish. He's been living in Japan for like 25 years. So he's longer in Japan than Ireland, but he's just like, oh, how's it going, blah blah. And I was like, yeah, it's just downloading, where because they used chips, the all 9 entry, so I had all these, the computer and all the kind of hardware and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's just it's gonna take a little bit of time. So I was like, Finton, I know this place, like, so I told him. So then he went over and told Nakai. He's like, this blah blah blah, Gary knows this company. Nakai was, I never forget his face. He was like, couldn't believe it. He's like, just this guy from Ireland knows this little tiny Porsche tuner in Chiba, like.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then I think it was a couple of months later. So we left anyway, finished the car, and then he was like, oh, we'll let you know, like, if we need to use, like, if we want to use, like, if any of the customers want their cars tuned, blah blah blah. So a few months later, there was a idlers event at Scuba, just one of the sprint race, not the endurance one at Motegi, but myself and, so the guy I worked with at the bar, Keith, so him and his best friend lived together, a guy called Tom, another guy from my area in Dublin. So Tom's into cars as well. So he used to have like all Starlet Glanzas, and he had a couple of Hondas, I think, back in the day. And I was like, oh, Tom, like, we have a day off from work, so like we should go out to Scuba. So none of us drove. So we got like 3 trains and got a taxi to the track, and we were just there. And we were up on top of the paddock, just like watching the cars in the straight and stuff. And then I just heard someone shout like, Gary. And I'm like, who the fuck is calling me? Like, I don't know anybody. I was like, who knows your name? Me? So I looked over, and it was Nakai, and he's like in the pits, like waving at me. He remembered me from obviously the first day. So just came down. I had a little chat with him. He didn't speak much English, and my Japanese at that time was really bad, like minimal. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And then he just basically, at the end of the conversation, he's like, because he was asking about work, and I think that was around the time of the earthquake.
Yeah, earthquake, I looked up, a few
months after the earthquake.
Was March 11, 2011.
2011. So it's probably a few months after that. So the tuning company, the work was really slow at that period, like for the months after, because no one wanted their cars tuned. Like Japan was in a
crisis.
It was crisis. Like I was in Tokyo for the earthquake. It was crazy. So it was really bad for a few months.
Yeah, my sister lived there during it too.
Really? Yeah.
But she lived up north. She lived by it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know what city she was in at the time, but I know she was up on that north end.
Yeah, it was bad enough in Tokyo. I can't imagine what it was like for people up, obviously, in that area. But yeah, Nakai was just, we had a conversation, and he just said, like, basically, like, why don't you come work for me? I was just like, what? I was like, all right. So yeah, about a week later, I just went out to RWB, and Nakai just handed me some tools and I just started working. So that's kind of really, that's how I met him, and then how I was offered the job, which is like, I think back on it like quite a bit every now and then, and it's just like, can't believe how it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's how things that are meant to be. I believe in that kind of stuff. I believe that,
I do. Yeah, for
things
sure.
happen for a reason. And typically that kind of serendipitous type situation like that, everything usually, it's like life is bad, everything's rough, nothing lines up. But when it matters, everything just connects, right? Every piece of it, everything's in the right spot, the right people, the right timing. And it's just like this perfect just situation where the rest of your life, you're kind of like connecting a wire here and there and things kind of work. But when you have a moment like that, just all of a sudden everything aligns. It's like you have this moment of focus where you can just understand exactly what's happening. And then you're like, yeah, like you didn't even probably have to think about it when he said it. I bet that you already knew, like, yeah, I'm going to go do this.
I couldn't believe what you were saying, to be honest. And then, so I was like, kind of taken back. Obviously, I was like, "What?" Just some random Irish guy with tattoos and doesn't really speak Japanese, and he's just like, "Come work for me." I was like, "All right," and that was it.
What kind of stuff were you doing for him at the start? So you go in. He says, "Come work for me." You said, "Sure." When do I start? You show up one day, he hands you some tools. What are you doing?
Really kind of basic stuff at the start. So obviously like moving cars around, changing wheels and tires, like getting cars prepped for the fenders going on basically. So taking like trims off, just wheel arch liners, kind of bumpers, like fenders, all that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of basic.
Was it just you and Nakai
stuff
at the
I could do in
time?
my sleep. Yeah, and then Ojima would be in the back painting every now and again. Like he
Yeah.
has his own shop as well, doing the 86 and other body work as well.
Yeah.
So he'd be in and out, and he'd be just in the makeshift spray booth we had at the back
Yeah.
that you've
That's
seen
so
obviously
cool.
millions of pictures of.
So the three of you like really connected. And Nojima-san, he looks like he's like, he's been in it for so long, but when I see pictures of him, even recent ones, he looks like he's like 25.
He
He
looks,
he he
yeah,
does not age.
he has not aged a day in the 10 years probably plus since I met him the first time. Like I haven't seen him now in probably a year or so.
Maybe
And
he got
he
old.
just he just looks the last time he just looks the exact same. Like
Yeah.
hasn't changed. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be most, and we worked nights, so I used to get trains, and it took me like nearly 2 hours to get to work
Is that
some
an
days.
expensive area to live in, Chiba?
No, it's pretty cheap, like because
Comparatively.
it's out in the sticks, like it's kind of far away from everywhere. Like it's a cool area. It's pretty old, and like all little restaurants and izakayas and stuff. Like it's a cool area to kind of. I don't know if I'd live there. It's a bit too far out for me, but I'd get trains out there, and then Nakai would pick me up at the station around midday, and then we'd go to this like tiny little Japanese like izakaya like curry place,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd have lunch, and then we'd work until 5 in the morning. And he'd drop me back to the station. I get the first train home. So I get home, and then so I do like some nights we are doing like 15 hours, 16 hours, and then I'd get a train home. I'd sleep, like have a shower, I'd sleep for a couple of hours, and then I'd go do it again. So like the schedule it's hectic. Like it was hard.
Yeah, but that's like, we talk about like, oh, we all want to have a job that we're passionate about and that we love what we're doing. And like when you're
Yeah,
working, it's more like you're playing because you enjoy what you're doing so much, right? And it sounds
yeah,
like it was that type of a job. It's not like you were, taking trains and doing all this stuff so that you could, go do accounting at some bank all
Yeah,
night.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
So,
But physically, like it takes its toll after a while. But
yeah.
then Nakai made a bedroom for me in there. We got like a bunk bed, and so I used to
Nice.
just sleep there for a while, which was perfect. So I'd sleep there, I'd have a shower, and then obviously just keep working. And then he'd start letting me take cars home, so I just drive home in RWBs, like, and it
Just no
was
biggie.
amazing. Like it was the best experience. When I think back, like I've worked in some really cool places over the years, but nothing compares to like 5 o'clock in the morning after working for 15 hours and you're driving the widest 993 with no interior and it's super loud and
And like no one knows
just the
them at the
best
time.
experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
just the best experience. Like, and the people looking at the car and then they double take because there's a white guy with tattoos driving on his own, like down the street.
Well, yeah, and I know this sounds silly, but tattoos are not taboo at all anymore. They used to be, but even 10 years
They
ago was
are
kind of
here.
that transition stage, and then especially in Japan, right? Like it's very different because of a lot of reasons. But
It's
like in
still
America,
super
it's
taboo here. I mean,
still,
everywhere, like in Europe, like when I lived in Sydney, like everyone has a tattoo.
yeah,
People are like full of tattoos, like, and it's
yeah.
just normal. Like, there's no.
But in
But
Japan,
here,
no.
no, you can't. Like, I can't go to a swimming pool with my kids. I can't go to onsens. Like, some of them I can. There's specific ones, but there's a lot of stuff you can't do with tattoos here.
Huh.
Like the gym. When I go to the gym, I have to cover up. I
Hmm.
got kicked out of my last gym last year because one of the staff saw me while I was changing in the change room, and he saw my sleeve, and then called my wife. So when I got home, my wife was like, because I have a sleeve, like a black nylon like thing that I just cover my arm with
Yeah.
when I work out.
Allen
And
Iverson style.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So she was like, "Did you forget to wear your thing?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know what she was talking about because the staff never said that to me."
Yeah.
So I
Huh.
came home and she was like, "Oh, did you forget your sleeve?" And I was like, "No, I wore. Like, what are you talking about?" And she's like, "The gym called. You're not allowed to go back." So I was like, I was fuming. I was going mad. Like, this was last year, like
Huh.
just
So
over a year
so
ago.
so back
So
then, so you got to a point you're working, he's letting you take cars home. You're just
yeah,
and you probably went from like menial tasks to like tuning to doing other things. Like what else? What did you grow into in that shop? So you started with doing kind of that stuff. What kind of things did he give you to do
so we
as you were there longer?
probably a few months into it, I started doing like be cutting the roofs out of cars and putting carbon fiber roofs in. Then some painting stuff, which I'd never done before, like using a spray gun. It was kind of a bit daunting for me, like especially on a customer's car, like on stuff like that. Um, Obviously interior stuff, and then suspension and like really setting this is he taught me how to like set the suspension on the cars with the kits, which is it takes a while. And in order to be there's no hoist, there's no ramp, like it's everything's done on the floor. So it's like jack the car up at all corners and then you're doing a work and you drop it down, you have to settle the car, and then it's just everything took a long time. It took a bit of getting used to because I'm used to working with obviously a
Just
ramp, like
factory
a
cars
hoist.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So stuff like that. And then I was there. I don't know how long I was working there, but probably 6 or 8 months in. We had a green 964 turbo with, I think, there's only about 20,000 kilometers on it. It was super low mileage. Green interior, like it was 964 turbo, like really nice car.
Mm-hmm.
Called me over and we are like, he showed me how to mask up to measure where the fenders go.
Huh.
Because on a 911, you're probably used to it with your car. It's like the measurements aren't the same on each side, obviously. Like the gap from the rear lamp to the edge of the fender
Mm-hmm.
on driver's and passenger side is slightly like a centimeter or two different, or whatever. I can't remember the exact.
Huh.
They're slightly. They're not completely. Yeah.
It's like asymmetrical.
Yeah. So he was just basically explaining like that. It's not one measurement the same, and each car is kind of different. So he's kind of showing me how to do that, and we're measuring the thing up, and then you like tape it off. You put masking tape everywhere, and like mark where to start cutting and blah blah blah. And then so we had it kind of masked up, and then he hands me a air saw and just lit a cigarette and just went like, "Dozo, like
your turn.
Go." Some he just walked away. He walked outside and he just like having a cigarette. So I stood there for probably 2 or 3 minutes and like, there's no way he's like letting me. I thought he was taking the piss, and then I just started cutting, and that was the first car I did, and I just cut, and then I'd done one fender, and then I called him over, and he just kind of came over and looked at it and just went, and just walked away. Like, I was just that confidence that he had in me at that time to just say like, right, you can do this, and like you can't really like fuck it up really that badly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could, but yeah. So he came over then a couple of times, and I just started cutting away, and he'd have a look, and he'd point out certain things, or like something, because the first cut wasn't perfect, obviously, because I was super nervous. I'd never chopped the fender off a car, anything, let alone a mint 964. Like, so he'd just come over and he'd give me like little pointers, and he just kind of have a look over, and he'd point out certain things if there was an issue or where not to cut, and blah blah blah, and that was it. And just from there, it was just
doing everything after that.
Pretty much, yeah.
What probably not a lot of people I could ask this to. What's it like having Nakai-san for a boss? What was it like working for him for 8 months or a year? How long were you there?
About a year and a half, and then I left Japan at that time, and then when I'd come back, I'd work kind of on and off with him a little bit over the years, but about a year and a half.
So it must have been okay, because you did 18 months and you came back to help. What was he like? Did it feel like you had a teacher? Did it feel like it was just your boss? Like, how was it?
It definitely wasn't a boss and worker situation. It's kind of really hard to explain. It was like, if you know Nakai, like people who know him will understand when I try and explain this. Like, he just loves cars. Like, he's quiet. He doesn't talk much. Like, some nights we'd be in there and we'd hardly say 10 words to each other.
Mm-hmm.
We just you'd have reggae on one night, and you'd have like blues on another, and just on the radio, like playing weird music, and we just work. And he'd tell me like what cars to do, blah blah blah, and we'd have a chat sometimes about stuff. But in general, like, it was like me and a friend just working together on cars in a garage, like just wrenching together like we would back home in Ireland, like. And then at the end of the day, you just drop me home, or I'd go home, and that was it. And then you tell me when to go back to work.
Did you help with?
Go on.
Did you help with like the idlers races, like the car prep for the idlers, or was that happening at the time?
I've done 5 idlers, and the first one I went to was, I think, 2011, 2010, maybe 2010. Like, just after I met him, and he offered me the job. I went and he drove me there. So I was like his passenger in Royal Montego Bay, going to the track. And then that's where I got to meet so like customers would come in and out, obviously, the workshop, but because we worked nights, there wasn't that many like people coming in and out back then. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until a couple of years later, like a year or so later, when like everyone would be coming in to try and take photos, like all bloggers, and like it got a bit crazy for a while.
Yeah.
But that first time I went to Motegi, and I met like Yoko and Shinji, and like Tommy and stuff, like all the old school,
the
OGs. Like,
yeah,
I love them guys. Like, they're such nice people. Like, genuine, like really, and like love the cars, and they're at RWB all the time. So I got to know them, like those guys, really, really well. But that was the first time I went, and I didn't race, and I just kind of helped out a little bit. I didn't really know anybody. I did not really know what I was doing. I just remember it was so hot, like July, late July,
yeah,
the last weekend or whatever. But I remember I was the only foreigner in Motegi.
yeah.
So everyone was just like, "Who is?" You could see it. They were like, "Who is this guy?" Just I'm almost walking around on my own, like with tattoos.
Probably thought you were like Patrick Dempsey or someone.
I don't know. Brad Pitt, probably.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So that was the first one, and then the next year I went. I worked with Nakai. So it was like 4 or 5 days and nights of working on getting the cars ready. I think the first year I did, we had 5 cars. There was the third or fourth year, I think we had 7 cars at one point, like racing. It was just a lot of work, like, and a lot of people, like a lot of customers are coming over. I remember one night, the night before, it must have been about 100 people at RWB. Like, it was madness. Like, but the second year, I think we had 3 cars, and we had Ramantra, the brown. It used to be brown. It's silver now.
mm-hmm.
It's the name on the side is in Thai, so you can't read it, but it reads Ramantra.
If it's the one I'm thinking of, yes, because I can think of a brown one that had the tie on the side of it.
Yeah, and like the paint was all messed up. Like, it was rough, and the stickers all over it. Like, rough world, obviously.
That's how my car is going to look, the unfortunately.
I love that. I hate the showy ones. Like, people ask me this all the time. The ones, I'm not going to go into too many details on.
No, don't burn any bridges. Well, you're okay. They all watch it.
I know, not burning bridges, but I just personally I prefer the daily driven and raced and driven home from the track, and like stone chips, and the paint's not perfect, and just that's my style. But it's each to their own, and that's just my opinion. But
yeah, no, I agree. That's what it was born in, right? They were born to be race cars. They weren't born at the Tokyo Auto Salon show or whatever, right? So, that was the evolution.
Like, I'm not judging anybody, and I obviously don't own one, so I can't judge other people and their taste, and like what do they want them. Absolutely mint car with perfect paint and whatever. So it's each to their own. But the second year, we went, and then so I was just working as a mechanic basically at the track. So exhausted, like hadn't slept for 2 days. It's 40 degrees Celsius, like humidity. Working, like the belts come off, and little issues with the cars, and like working on the engines that have been running on track for 8 hours, and like the heat. It was just crazy. Like, and then I think about 10 hours in Ramantra, the gearbox, the selector wouldn't select. So it comes in, limps into the pits. So myself and Nakai are underneath it. And I'll never forget, like, the heat. There's photos. I think Shinji took pictures years ago. I'll try and dig them out and send them to you. It's me and Nakai under the car. And like, literally, the car is like this far away from our bodies.
Yeah, just no space, just heat soaked everything.
Heat, so, and it just nosedive into the pits, and then the 2 of us are under it. So basically, we hammered the selector into third gear, like, and went up and just locked it in third gear. So we had we put like duct tape. So we had this, obviously the gear knob like in third, the shifter, and then we had like taped it to the dashboard so no one could change. And then Nakai wrote a sign in English like, "Please don't shift." And then he came to me because he wanted the car to finish the race. So he came over to me then. He's like, "Gary, like you drive." I was like, "What?" I didn't have a helmet or I didn't have anything because I was just working there. Like I didn't have the suit. So Shinji gave me like a spare, get a blue Sparko suit. And another one of the Japanese guys gave me a helmet. And I just used like the trainers I was in. And someone gave me gloves. And I just went out and I did like 20 minutes in just in third gear. That was so my first time at Motegi. And it's like it was getting dark.
Yeah.
So, and there's just cars everywhere. And so there's like the Citroen 2CV, and then there's like Mini Coopers, and then there's like 911s, which are a bit faster. And then the guy who won it that year and most years, I think Car Guy, you know that blog or website? It's super famous here, but he had I think a Lotus Esprit, something like that. And I was just flying. So I'm in third gear, like driving around Motegi. I'd never driven Motegi.
Yeah, one
before.
gear. Yeah.
Getting dark, and there's just lights coming up behind me. So I'm trying to pass people, and there's people trying to pass me. It's just chaos. Like, but I did it. It was just the best experience ever. So that was, I think, the second year, and then for each year after that, I'd race and like help out with the cars and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I realize it's amazing. The 12 hours, it's just tough. The heat and the week like leading up to it, and even after it, like we'd all drive the cars home, like back to Kashiwa, and then we'd sleep a little bit maybe, and then the next day they were like fixing the cars, like taking the stickers off, cleaning them, like repairing whatever was damaged. Yeah. It's like a 4-day thing. Like it's really tough, but amazing memories. Like I remember one year Nakai's accountant was in, and they were running through the numbers on what it cost to run, I think it was 6 cars that year. It cost, I'm not going to say how much it was, but it's a lot of money.
Like, well, that was 6 years ago, or 6 cars a long time ago. You can say roughly.
No,
cost of a car, less than a car,
more than a car for sure.
Yeah.
Like 6 cars, the prep that goes into it, just the fuel alone, the price for race fuel.
Yeah.
Well, not race fuel, but fuel at the track. Like just 6 cars running for 12 hours, and then they're all, none of them are taken on trailers. They're all driven there. That was actually, speaking of that was the best experience for me, driving to Motegi in like convoy in the middle of the night. Like we used to leave around midnight to get to the track by like 4 a.m. The race starts at 8, so it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But
how far is it from Chiba or from Kashiwa to Motegi?
I think it's like an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like that, roughly.
Yeah.
But there's one year, so we all meet at this parking area, and then we top off the car, like fill them up. It's kind of halfway between, just off the expressway. And so the photos are amazing because every year all the cars are like at the gas pumps, and like the staff are like filming the cars, and everyone's just like chatting and talking shit. And we were there one year, and like about 50 Bozozoku bikes came in. So there must have been about 20 or 25 RWBs that year. So wow. I think 6 or 7 racing them, but like customers and
people wanting to be a part of the action, just even to go hang out in the paddock, right?
Yeah, so we're all getting fuel, and then all the Bozozoku bikes came up, and they were getting fuel, and it was just those bikes there, and they have like flashing lights, and then all the RWB. It was like amazing. One of the best experience that night was one of the best nights I've had in Japan with cars, like for sure.
I was gonna say that's got to be one of the most memorable things, because I know what all those bikes look like, and I'm just sitting here like, yes,
but the noise,
yes,
right. But then there's people coming home from work, or like people driving with their kids, and then so they're coming through to get gas or petrol or whatever, and then they just see, and there's just noise, and so you could see people, and they're like, "What the fuck is going on?" So then we went out into the expressway then, and then so all the Bozozoku bikes are flying, and then all the RWBs are flying back. I was driving a 964 Tarantula, it was called, black one, just all black, no wing. It was one of my favorite RWBs
because it just looks like it's wide and crawling, right?
It was so good. And previous to Idlers, they had kind of stickers, and Nakai just like spray paints numbers on the doors. It used to freak me out. I'm like, you can't just paint. So it just had a silver number. I think it was number 1 or 13, maybe. I think it was 13. We just spray paint.
You want
like
the number off of that 91?
Was it 91? 191? Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. In fact, it could have changed, right? Like,
no, it was. I remember it was 91. I had photos on my blog at the time. So I'm just like, we're flying down the motorway then, and it's just like Oka bikes and RWBs, and it's just the noise and just the experience was incredible. I think Lou Cookson maybe did a video that night. There was a few guys, and they had like a Alphard, like a big family van, and like they were hanging out at the sunroof and taking videos.
I think there might be clips of it in Churn's video, because he's got a whole spot like going to the gas station. I don't remember the Bosusukas in that, but
well, it could have been a gas station every year. It's just that's the routine. Everyone meets there at the same time, and then they all leave from there.
Yeah,
but that's one of the most memorable experiences I had for sure.
I don't know. Hey, were you ever involved in any of like the car naming? Like, did Nakai ever say like, what do you think of a name for this one we're working on today or anything?
No.
Or is that a pretty personal, spiritual thing for him, or do the names just kind of come?
I think sometimes they just come, and then other times, like especially people he knows, like he knows kind of stuff about the person, and he'll kind of tailor the name to their personality or whatever. But it's all, I never asked him about that kind of stuff. It's all kind of personal, him and customers. And
yeah,
I think some people ask for now. I think some people probably have asked,
like, bring up a name they'd like to have it on it, and he's just like, that's fine, whatever.
Yeah, I think like customers and some of the lads in the States or in Europe maybe have asked for names. But I don't know. I never really paid much attention to that.
I might name mine Gary.
I'll have to charge it. Just trademark that.
Yeah. I already got your name trademarked before I got on this call. So.
Damn it.
Yeah. What was like one experience, if you can think of one, that was just for you, maybe like the craziest what just happened at work kind of day? Was there any day that like something caught on fire, or you had to like run and save someone's life? Like, was there any kind of like real hijinks, anything just absolutely off the wall that happened in the shop that you can think of?
No.
All right. Well, that was easy.
Like nothing crazy, no.
What about like, have you ever seen Nakai say no to anything? Like a client requests something, they say, hey, can we build the car this way? And he said, no.
Yeah, a few times. And I think he's pretty straightforward in that interaction with customers. See, a lot of stuff, foreign customers, a lot of it goes through Toshi as well. So it's not like the customer was there in the workshop when we were there and I witnessed the conversations, or if it's over the phone. So there's not really many I can kind of put my finger on right now, but it's definitely something that he's probably said no to a couple of. See, people used to ask weird stuff, and so RWB, they've like, you've probably seen photos. There was an S15 Sylvia, the black one.
Mm-hmm. That was Toshi's car, though, right?
I don't know. It could be. I've never actually physically seen that car. It was just photos. That was before my time, even. So people have asked him to do stuff like that, and then there was a 997. Was it 997? He did years ago, a matte black one. Before. Now I know he's doing them now.
Oh, it was a 996, I think, and then they did the headlight thing.
Probably. It was called Stealth Bird, I'm sure. And I think the owner has an RWB, so I think he did 993 or 964, but I don't know why he did that car for that specific customer. And then obviously Toshi had the Ferrari, the 348 with the rauh welt banner on it. So he's done a couple of like obscure things, but I think people used to ask him to do stuff like that a lot.
And he said, like, that's just not what we work on.
Like, he's no interest.
Yeah.
Like I spent a lot of time with Nakai over the years, like, and even gone to events. There's one thing, like, I'm not going to speak for him, obviously, but he doesn't like shows and he doesn't like events, and he just wants to work on cars. It's crazy to see. It's brilliant to see, like, because he's so passionate about Porsche. But like, we were in Germany when we built. I helped a tiny bit. Sydney, RWB Germany. Sydney Hoffman's the first 993 in Germany, the purple Furusato.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably 5 years ago maybe. But Sydney had kind of like an event and car show stuff, and then we went to KW, the factory. We met because Sydney's friends with the owner, and we went to the Porsche museum. We got like a private tour and stuff, and just watching Nakai at like certain places, and he's just like, some of the coolest old Porsches are like, you'd see a Ferrari or a Lamborghini and stuff, and he's just, you can see him kind of look around it a little bit, but it's just, he doesn't care. It's just 911 like RWB. I love it.
Yeah, and that's why he likes Corollas.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's about a visceral, it's a different experience. It's how do you connect with that vehicle?
But he's super respectful, about like people's cars or like people's tastes, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think he takes like maybe style cues or like on design, like liveries and stuff. Like you see some, I think your friend Jesse, right? That has the 964.
Yeah.
And he just got the 993.
Yeah.
So he messaged me like I've been chatting a little bit on Instagram with him, and he asked me about, there was a sticker on the fender on Royal Montego Bay, and it's like a dancing lady.
Uh-huh.
It's black. It's just a silhouette.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was like, have you any idea what that sticker is? And I was like, yeah, and I only know because I actually have the model car. There was a 1970s rally car. I think Monte Carlo rally. It's the company. It's Gitanes, Gitanes. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a French.
Yeah.
It's a French like tobacco company, but that's their logo. The logo is the dancing lady. So I think it's the dancing gypsy or something they call it. Like they have a name, but that's something that he obviously saw maybe on someone else's car, or maybe just, and then he had it on the rear fenders on Royal Montego Bay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's stuff like that I used to love, because he'd just get all these weird stickers made up, and we'd be like building a car for customers.
He'd just show up with them. He'd fly from like Japan with these stickers.
Yeah, he brings them in as like toolbox or whatever, and so stuff like that was really cool for me, because it's like, like some stickers he'll just have like Air France on the wing of a 993, and I'm like, if you put Air France on any other car, like, it would look shit.
Yeah,
you'd be like, what? But for some reason it just works on an RWB. Like, it's weird, it's crazy.
And I don't know if you came along too late or what it's like. One of the things that actually Jesse and I were even talking about the other day were how many narrow body 911s you see running rauh welt banners, right? And I believe I'll give you my hypothesis, and then I want you to kind of just dive in and talk to me about what you know.
Yeah.
My thought to Jesse, or as we talked about this, was rauh welt started as a Japanese racing group. It was about the club, it was about the people getting together. And so I believe that as Rough World, became like wide body cars and stuff, like that was a brand that came out of that. But my thought is the reason you see so many narrow body 911s with welt banners or rough world banners is because they were just generally part of that racing group or that friendship circle. And then the other idea, my other conspiracy thought would be it's like Midnight Club or something where people just buy stickers and put them on their cars because they think it's cool. Is it either of those?
It's more the first one, I think.
Okay.
Than the second for sure. Because I know a few people that have asked Nakai for banners before, and he said no. Like people that didn't have an RWB, but they had a Porsche. Now he has done it a few times. There's a couple of customers that are like people involved with RWB that have not stock 911s, but like not wide body ones that have the banners. So I guess it's kind of case by case thing, but I obviously wasn't around back in the 80s, early 90s when he was when it was starting. So it's kind of hard for me to say. But yeah, I think it's probably just people he raced with or worked with at racetracks, because he told me his story one night. We had to drop a customer's car off to a hotel in Tokyo. So I drove the customer's car, and then Nakai followed, or I followed him, and then we both had to drive back to Kashiwa. And it was one of the few times where I never used to ask Nakai questions, and for you, especially when I work there, I still get messages to this day. What does Nakai think about this? Or like, can you ask Nakai to sign this thing for me? And I'm like, no, I don't do any of that shit. Like, it's not
your job description.
It's not my, no, it's like, I don't like doing that, because it's, hey, Nakai, can you sign this t-shirt for my friend? Like, I would never ask them to sign or do any, like, it's just not me. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Personally. So I never really asked them personal questions, or we talk about cars, and he'd ask me about stuff in Ireland and like family, and like genuinely, like he was interested in like my background, I guess, and we'd have like conversations every so often. But most of the time, it was, like I said, it was just work. We'd hardly talk some nights, and we just work away and like get stuff done and listen to music, and that was it. But one night we were coming back, we're after dropping that car off, and we were driving back to Chiba, and I think he asked me something about family or past or whatever, and then I just said to him, I was like, what's, like, how did RWB start? Like, what's the story? So he told me. I'm not going to obviously go into his whole story. It'll be another hour, but yeah, he had bought a 911, as I recall. I don't remember what year he said, but he used to go to, I think, scuba and like tracks and stuff, and he just do like track days, or he's like, I was always trying to get the faster time for himself.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, it was kind of stock 911s and like the skinny tires and stuff, and then, so he's like, I'd put bigger tires on, and then it's like I'd have to kind of make the fenders a little bit bigger to fit the bigger wheels, and he's like, that's kind of how it progressed,
evolved out
over time. Yeah. But he's like, people used to come over, and so he'd be getting like kind of quicker times than other guys that had more money, because he's like, he had no, obviously he had a 911, he wasn't like living on the streets, but like,
yeah,
he's like, I spent all my money on the car. That was his whole life. Like, it's just track days and like whatever money he had. He'd spend, I think he was working at a body shop, Mercedes body shop, I think, if I recall. So he's like, people used to ask me then, they're like, oh, can you help me with my car? Like, obviously you're getting your second faster than you were like last year or whatever.
Yeah.
So that could be the case where those people start running the banner then when he started like with the idea of rauh welt. So maybe it's kind of like, that's my,
it was his way. Like, it was like his tuning shop sticker at the time anyway.
Yeah.
Kind of like, hey, I took this to, Volcano or whoever, right? Like, yeah.
So maybe that's kind of why you see some of the older like narrow body ones that were probably track cars that he worked on, or he helped people tune, or maybe he had a friend then who had a car and wanted a banner. Obviously trying to promote your friend's business back in the 80s or 90s. Like, I don't know. So that's probably it. But
what do you think? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Do you remember the old the font was totally different? Have you seen the pictures?
When it was like bubbly.
No, there's one where it's literally just like normal. I'll try to get you a picture, and you can stick it up on the screen.
You'll have to send it to me. I have to see.
I should have one in one of the. I have an old RWB, like a Porsche magazine, like tuning, and it's just it's just our RWBs from the 90s. Like, I'll dig that out and I'll try to get pictures. But I think one of his first cars was a red 930 maybe, but it was just like a normal font that you'd send an email in, but it was rauh. It's really cool. Like,
so, yeah. If you can find that, send it. I'll put it in here for sure.
I will. I'll find it.
Very cool to have. No, that's awesome. It seems like, I mean, I'm sure that you have a million stories I could dig out of you. And if you ever give me the chance to get round two, we'll do this again, but we'll do it either I'll be in Tokyo, I'll be in Japan, I'll come see you and we'll do it. Or if you're out here maybe sometime, then I'll take my car and we can do it with my car. We'll go drive mine.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know when I'll be allowed to travel again.
Yeah, I think that's how we all feel right now, but it's around the corner. We're going to be able to start getting out. Canada opens up, I think, next week.
Really?
Yeah, Canada opens up. You know, in where I live, we haven't had to wear masks or anything for like 6 months.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So here we even can like go to concerts and stuff now.
Yeah.
So we're pretty open here. But who knows, the global travel thing is a little bit more, they can control it more than you can control your neighborhood.
Yeah. Like, I haven't been home to Ireland, obviously, in probably almost 3 years. Be 3 years probably next month or so.
I haven't been home to Portland for probably almost that long either. 2 years probably.
Yeah. But I mean, it is what it is. Once I'm all right, the family are good, so I can't really complain too much. So
is your Instagram public or private these days?
It's public.
Okay, so people should go. I will tell everybody who's watching this, I'm going to put a link to his Instagram in the description on this. And I'll probably put it on the screen right here too. So here's your Instagram, and then I'll have it run down too. Really interesting because you've brought a lot of just the daily driver kind of car culture and been able to show how much of Japan's really preserved a lot of auto history still, even though every country is trying to come in and buy all their cool old stuff now. The things, especially the American market, 25-year-old cars and stuff. But you put up a lot of great stuff on Instagram that I think people can go and check out, because it's interesting to me to see, maybe what it looks like to see an old E30 BMW sitting in Tokyo parked against a house on the sidewalk, or even skylines that are not taken care of, or old K cars and Hondas and like whatever. It's like Gary's got a very good collection of that type of stuff. Just kind of your everyday Japanese living car spotting type stuff on his Instagram. So I invite everybody who watches this to check it out, because it's interesting. Like it sounds like it's not that different from any other thing you'd see on Instagram, but to me, it's cool. I like to see pictures of Gary's adventures in Tokyo. So keep doing that, and then obviously anything else you want to do, but don't stop doing those. We like them.
I will. It's because I do walk a lot and now cycle quite a bit, and I'm out. I work like 6 days a week, so I'm always out, and I'm always kind of looking for cars, just weird, obscure stuff. Yeah,
fair, because I will not forget. I'm like an elephant. Cool. All right. Well, have a good night, and I'll talk to you on Instagram here soon.
You too. Take care, bud.
Thank you. See you, man. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.